My Spirit Encounter of the Evil Kind by Cherokee Billy. How do you begin to tell a story about a night when you were bombarded by evil spirits? The best way is to start from the beginning. My story begins in December 1986 when I got my first pedigreed puppy, a Shih Tzu, who I named Julia. Since I never had a pedigree before, I bought a book all about the history of Shih Tzus. They originated in China and were not exported out of China until 1930. Prior to that, they were treated like royalty because they guarded the spiritual temples from any evil spirits. They were known as the temple's spirit guards. I found that quite fascinating and proceeded to have my life with Julia. Julia was a very sweet and affectionate little dog. Everyone who saw her instantly fell in love with her precious face. I was used to having dogs who loved to go wherever I did in the car, but from the beginning Julia would cry and scratch at the doors trying to get out. I took her to the park and she was very unhappy. The only place she enjoyed going was to my father's office and to visit him. My father was Cherokee and always had an instant connection with animals. For some reason he could come and take Julia off in his truck and he would have no problem with her, unlike me. As time progressed, I decided it was best not to try to force Julia out and let her be happy and content at home. To her that was her temple and she was guarding it. I did not really understand what guarding it was for her, but I let her do what came naturally. In time, I was to have a clear understanding of her spiritual nature. After a year and a half, I got another puppy, a Yorkshire Terrier named Natasha. She was much more like the dogs I had in the past and wanted to go everywhere in the car or wherever I was. She was not content to be in one place like Julia. They got along well and played and slept together. The three of us were happy. I moved in 1996, and Julia had no problems adapting to our new home. In 1998, I purchased my first house and had a live-in housekeeper, Teresa, move in with us. Because Teresa and I were the same age, I thought that we would have a lot in common. In the first week, I realized that was not going to be the case. I asked her to watch a movie with me, and it was a comedy with a sweet scene of two people hugging in the shower that only showed them from the neck up. Teresa turned her head from the television and said, "I can't believe they would show such filth in the movies." I was stunned. I knew then that we would never see eye to eye on things. Teresa made me suspicious because she was overly religious and behaved like someone who was in a cult. She was very secretive about everything, wore dresses down to the floor, and always had on long-sleeved shirts buttoned to her neck, no matter what the temperature. I often wondered what she did all the hours she was alone in her room. I felt that she did spiritual or religious type rituals. I just had no idea what they were. The house had been very special to me because it was designed by a paraplegic who lived there until he died, and everything was designated for a disabled person. I had been disabled for 8 years and needed this type of home. It was the most unique house I had ever seen. When you opened the front door, you were not in the house, but in a courtyard. It was built in a C formation and Spanish-styled. Everything was operated by push-button, including opening the different doors throughout the house. I had cameras everywhere and could see what was going on inside and outside of my house. It was truly my dream home. I knew that the man who created the home had died in bed, but that did not disturb me because I felt complete peace in the home. I took my time before I purchased it, making sure that I felt no negative energies. From the first day that I moved in, I knew the spirit of the previous owner was there, as he would turn on lights. I asked him to stop doing that, and he complied. but I could feel his gentle spirit around me. From the moment we moved into the new home, Julia had a complete personality change. She was afraid of everything. The slightest noise would make her start crying and want to be with me. She would climb all over me in utter fear. She would try to climb onto my head when I was in bed, even if there were no sounds. The caretaker, Teresa, would take her outside and take her by the fence where there were large dogs barking. Every time Julia would come back petrified, and I told the caregiver to stop taking her to the fence. The woman simply ignored my instructions. Finally, I made it clear to Teresa that she would take Julia only in the courtyard where it was quiet, or else she could leave my employment. This did it. I was greatly concerned, however, about Julia because she had never acted crazed. I was beginning to think that perhaps she had a mental problem or some other medical condition that was causing her to behave so unnaturally. It reached a point that I could not watch a movie because any sound would send Julia into a terrified state. She would cry and tear at my body. This was going on for months. I was concerned that I was going to have to put her to sleep because I could not control her, and her life was miserable. I have always believed in the quality of life over quantity. I did my best to keep all sounds quiet. At the end of the first year, Teresa left my employment. The moment that she left my house, that morning Julia instantly became calm. The difference was incredible. For the first time she slept and seemed like the happy little puppy she had always been. That night the strangest things I have ever encountered occurred. As soon as it turned dark, I could hear the sound of people, spirits, rushing through the house. Doors were opening and closing, and I could hear whispering throughout the house. It was as though Teresa had unleashed evil spirits into the house that she had been working with. Throughout the night I continued to hear all of these strange noises. Julia was alert and sitting awake throughout the entire night. I did not get frightened by spirits because of the many times I have seen and had contact with spirits prior to this night. I found it rather annoying, and who are you going to call it? Midnight? Ghostbusters? It was best just to ride out the situation and pray for protection. At 5:30 that morning I heard a very strange sound. Natasha suffered from colitis, and when she was having an attack she would walk in a circular motion on newspapers in the bathroom, trying to stop the spasms. When this would happen, I would have to give her medicine. I started hearing the sound of Natasha walking on the newspapers, going round and around. I began to call her to come to me. I called over and over. I could hear her walking on the newspapers, but when I moved my left arm, there was Natasha lying next to me. The spirit was imitating her illness, and I became furious at that point. How dare this spirit mimic my dog when she was sick? They had tried to upset me all night and could not, but they figured out the way to finally get to me. I placed myself in a circle of cornmeal and salt and began commanding that all negative energies and spirits leave my house by the power of the divine spirit. Within a few minutes the house became completely quiet. Julia went to sleep, and I kept thinking about what had happened. The negative spirits never returned, but there were other peaceful and beautiful spirits that did manifest themselves over the years that I lived there. I learned many different things from this. First, the incredible spiritual vision that a Shih Tzu has and why they were so revered by the Chinese. It's astounding. From that point on, I have always trusted my animals to tell me what is going on around me. I also learned that you cannot trust and allow people into your life without spending a great deal of time getting to know them and checking out their spirits. Teresa had many different entities attached to her, and I did not stop and think about her spirit before I allowed her to live with me. I now check out people's spirits before they become a part of my life. I trust that this story has opened your spiritual eyes to the gifts of animals and a deeper appreciation of the ancient teachings. Also, be aware of the spirit that dwells within the people that are in your life. Julia is a special little girl, and I'm glad that she has been a part of my life. Thank you for listening to my story. This is Cherokee Billy.